And welcome back to our second part of our chat with Malcolm Bangs. We've decided to call this episode 23.
Yeah,
just keep it easy.
We've done all the formal stuff. Now we start going on some tangents and getting into the crux of Malcolm Bangs.
Yeah, and into his current venture being Zenith Sports and tackling training amongst around a lot of different sports and a lot of different clubs around Melbourne.
Yep.
And then dabbling into his professional wrestling career, which I had no clue about when I asked him about it.
We've got some MMA in there as well with UFC Adelaide coming up.
Coming up as well. All right, so enjoy part 2 of our chat with Malcolm Bangs.
And take the hit, which is what judo and a lot of other martial arts that include throws and impact will actually teach you. Otherwise, you end up broken.
Absolutely. And that's a brilliant segue into your other position now with Zenith Sports and Get Your Tackle On.
Yep.
So how did this come about as well?
So I think that's a better name than Get Your Tackle Out.
Absolutely. So we 10 years ago, the Victorian Institute of Sport had a men's soccer program, which was technically a boys' soccer program.
Well, if you need to learn how to fall, for soccer,
absolutely. Hence, that was it. How do we dive so well, please?
The getting up thing, not so
absolutely.
great.
But what was happening was these guys are elite players. They were sort of, I think, 14, 15 or 15, 16.
Yep.
And they were playing in the Victoria Premier League under-21s competition. So what you got is you got 14, 15-year-old boys getting sort of manhandled and pushed around.
Yep.
Because soccer is a non-contact sport. And what was happening was these guys, they were getting very shy. They were getting shied away. The gentleman that introduced or requested it, his name's Ian Greener. So pretty much to this day, I still owe him everything that just sort of started with this idea.
So that 10 grand, I'll let you know.
Yep. And he basically, his idea was, how do I toughen these boys up?
Right.
I just want him to he initially thought boxing, and his brain went, wait a second, I can't just go punch and then bang, right? And then he told me this little story where apparently in the 60s and the 50s, dance classes, secret dance classes were held for soccer players because in those days dancing was obviously very effeminate, and you were of the other persuasion
in those days.
Yeah. So what would happen is these guys would apparently, I think he was saying, or someone else actually agreed with it and told me this story, I think, that guys would either organise private dance lessons with dancing instructors and all this sort of stuff so that no one knew what they were doing, because apparently also too a lot of the dancing instructors were that way inclined.
Right,
And to quote Seinfeld, not that there's anything wrong with that. But yeah, so they had to sort of do it in secret. Now he went and did his homework and sort of remembered someone saying that judo is like dancing.
Right.
Which it is to a point when
a lot of footwork.
When you do your kata and all that sort of stuff, we're moving together and all that. Yep. So he just thought, okay. Initially, the idea was that so obviously we had to teach the guys break falls and things like that.
That actually is a lot like my dancing. Someone always ends up on the ground.
And then, so these guys would do their break falls and things like that, which actually instilled their confidence. And once we got that up and running, we actually just got them to beat the shit out of each other. And honestly, what it did, it tipped them over the edge to the point where, hang on a second, this isn't going to happen to me on the field.
Not going to get pushed off the ball.
Absolutely. Then from there, we started working on some skill-based stuff on how to hold out. So using your positional weight and all that sort of stuff, understanding where the postures were and all this. We're also doing things like, so for example, very early on, we were doing, when we were teaching the forward rolls, we were doing sort of second effort stuff where, let's say, for example, you got tripped over, you rolled up to then head. You then head in. So they'd have their eye on the ball consistently.
Head the ball, that is, not the player.
Sorry.
I saw you're getting confused.
Liverpool kiss.
Hey, I've seen Glasgow soccer.
And so they do that sort of stuff where I think it was very early on. I think this was one of the guys, they had a highlight reel, and one of the guys made a break. He was on his own. He had a defender to beat who went in for the slide tackle. The slide tackle was actually he jumped over it.
Yep.
Right.
Rather than take the dive because the ball was ahead and it was him versus the keeper, he actually did a forward roll.
Wow.
And then ended up scoring the goal.
Wow.
So it's that sort of stuff.
Where's the YouTube video?
Absolutely. No. I don't have a copy. I believe Ian does, and I've been meaning for like almost, 10 years to find that copy. But these sort of things where that happened, I had the pleasure of watching the guys play. I reckon it would be about 2009, prior to the Under-19 World Cup.
Right.
The Kiwis brought their Under-19 team over versus the VIS team.
Yep. Yeah.
And the Kiwis came out hard. They came out really hard. They were bumping everyone over. And
They were like 30-year-olds.
all my boys were just rolling up and standing there. They withheld the old footy attitude. Go out there for a hard 15 minutes. Hit them hard for 15 minutes. They held that, and you could see that they ended up getting one of the players red carded because he got frustrated. He actually couldn't.
That's unbelievable.
And they were standing there, and it's like, and then they got to play their game, and I think they actually won 2-1. I think.
It's like the Fight Club mentality. Like, come in, this guy's getting the shit beaten out of him, he's just laughing, taking his best shots.
Yeah.
Same thing. That's what you got.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you can get, I'm a big believer in, again, this comes back to the rugby mentality from Mr. Adrian Bolton, who was my first grade rugby coach at Yarra Valley. If you can get in the mind of somebody, you know you got them.
Yeah, exactly.
If all of a sudden, if I score a try on you, or if I tackle you and you get up and you try and punch me, why retaliate?
Exactly.
You've already won.
I've already won, and I'm now in your mind.
Yeah.
He showed me this is pretty cool. He showed me a game back in the old Four Nations days. So, so England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. He was, I think it was Ireland versus Wales. Can't remember who did the deed, but this particular gentleman, I think it was an outside centre. There was a bit of a tussle,
right?
And he was pushing him, and I think it was the Irish. The Welsh outside centre landed the biggest tongue kiss on the Irish guy. And this, we're talking back in the 80s or something. I don't know when it was, but he showed me this video because he said about getting into people's minds and how it works. Yep. And so this guy just planted one. And obviously, and I can't do Irish accents, but he's obviously like, you dirty fucker. Right? and like pointing to him. And the guy was like, seriously, like an all game. So the minute this Welsh guy got the ball, the Irish guy would come off his line.
Yep.
Right. So he'd leave this gaping hole.
Yep.
The guy would just take the tackle, dish it off, straight through. Yep. And they just kept scoring try after try after try.
Must be hard to keep playing with a heart on.
Absolutely.
So he's just trying to get his number. That's all he wanted.
Well, if he had it turned the other way, he would have just at least there would have been like a break there. There would have been, that gaping hole wouldn't have been open.
Well, with the Welsh and the Irish playing, no matter what happens, they're both going to blame the English anyway.
Exactly right.
So the hardest part was trying to fend off all the rest of the Irish trying to get a kiss.
And that's how the Blarney Stone came about.
But I like listening to hearing Mike Tyson talk about the mind games he'd play when he'd walk to the ring. And hear his whole... it might have been on his the Tyson documentary or his stand-up.
I think he played mind games with himself sometimes too.
Yeah, where he's talking about where he goes through there. He's like, he shows him walking out. He's like, I'm scared, I'm terrified. I'm fighting this guy. He's supposed to beat me. He's supposed to dish me up. I'm supposed to be the baddest man on the planet. Then I get closer, and then I relax, and then I get into the ring, and then I look him dead in his eyes, and I never take my eyes off him. And when he looks away, I know I've got him.
Yeah.
And he said, it depends how long it takes them to look away. But he knows he just keeps their gaze. And as soon as they look away, he's like, I got him.
Absolutely.
He was a human Rottweiler, though. Like he's had some brilliant quotes. They were really intelligent things for a bloke who's not known for his mental acuity.
Went to prison, not Princeton, as the saying goes.
But things like, they were talking about how he was going to get beaten by, I can't remember who. I think it was Frank Bruno, actually. Yeah. Saying, he can do this. He's got this plan. He's going to counter your cross-the-body uppercut combo. He's like, everybody's got a plan until they get hit.
Absolutely.
And I think that's true with pretty much every contact sport. Everyone's got a plan of what they're going to do.
Exactly.
Until they cop one.
I remember George Foreman being interviewed about his fight with Ali, and they were saying, the stare down and stuff. And he goes, I wasn't really into stare downs, so I didn't really like it. He said, but I knew Ali did. Yeah. And he goes, and how were you finding that? He goes, I was just hoping that he'd keep my gaze. And I go, why? He goes, I didn't want him to look down because my knees were knocking. And I'm like, how good's that? It's like I just wanted to keep his gaze because I didn't want him to look down because I was just So.
He's a great character.
He's brilliant.
Every year he comes out with the same tweet. He's like, hey, Muhammad, I'm still ready for that rematch.
He apparently, I don't know if this is actually true, but he apparently punched through a man's forearm, like as in broke it. Broke it. I heard. I don't know.
I would believe it.
Some guys, so they've done the regular, two arms up
style,
over the right, and he has just gone bang and broke their forearm with a punch or something.
I would not surprise me.
Yeah.
Would not surprise me at all. Because I remember seeing, it would have been on that documentary where they show him hitting the heavy bag.
Yeah.
Fuck. Oh my God.
The whole room shakes.
You look at that thing and you're just like, there's nothing that stands in the way of that. Like, you just can't do anything about it. And then you watch Ali just take all those shots to the body. Yeah. And you're like, man, your mind must be so strong to be able to take all that and go, I got it. I'm still going.
No, take all that and then at the 9th round or something.
Is that all you got, George?
You got Chen.
He was right. That's all I had.
So Zenith Sports, you haven't called it Zenith yet, but it started in soccer.
Yeah, So basically, it started with this movement in soccer, and we just.
And it just worked.
It just worked, and we did it. And we haven't done much soccer. We've done a little bit, but not much since. And then a friend of mine had a mate who was doing the refurb at the Western Bulldogs.
Right.
And they were talking with, I think, the logistics manager about some stuff. And he rang, and next thing you know, I've got a contact, and they're like, do you think your stuff could work down here? And I'm like, absolutely. He's like, talk to this bloke. So he put me on to the logistics manager, who said, look, send me out some stuff and we'll do it. And then it's very serendipitous, for want of a better word. A great judo player by the name of Warren Rosser. Right. It was up in Sydney, and he was with the Sydney Swans for 7 or 8 years as their tackling coach in their heyday. So we're talking the 205, 206.
0506, I played the grand final.
So, and at that stage also too, the West Coast Eagles had a gentleman by the name of Stuart Cormack, who happened to be a very good judoka.
Right.
Who was he's a strength and conditioning guru. He was previously way back with Essendon and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
So
Stephen Dank, not ranked.
No, definitely
no
not.
Rank.
Just to actually put that there. I've known, I was speaking with Stewie at the time. Stewie's a very astute man, and Stewie, it was very interesting how. Because I'd sort of finished with the Dogs, and I was talking with Stewie, and he was still at Essendon, and I wanted to go down and watch how they worked and see what I was missing out on in relation to it. And pretty much, initially it was like, absolutely, Mal, come down, and then all of a sudden it was sort of like
closed doors.
He just turned around and he just said, "No, I don't think it's going to work." And then Stewie was gone.
Okay,
really?
So Stewie, in my opinion, and I have no. I can only base this on the man. Stewie decided to leave very, very early.
Right.
And so
saw the writing on the wall.
I would hope that he didn't see the writing on the wall at all, because I don't want to bring him into any disrepute, because the man would not be into any disrepute. But so he. So pretty much, basically what happened there. So these guys had this. Essendon, Sydney and West Coast both had their
judoka tackling.
Their
coach.
judoka tackling guys doing certain things. Rodney Eade was now the Western Bulldogs coach. Apparently, the word was that this guy's gone, I've got some judo guy, and apparently it was like, get him. So thank you, Warren Rosser. So I made a call to Warren. I said, mate, I'm tripping into this. What can I do? And he just sort of said 2 things. And one thing he did say to me is, Mal, don't put your house on it.
Yep.
Right. Yep.
Don't think these things will happen. They will train football for football. Yep. When the shit hits the fan.
Yep.
And I went, absolutely. Ended up over there. Leon Cameron was my handler. Great bloke. Had a lot of fun. Initially, so my baptism of fire, 2009. I went down. It was about round 5 or 6.
Yep.
Just to have a look at what they were doing.
Yep.
And then from there came back and did a session. Now, unbeknownst to me, and Mr. Chris Shen actually informed me of this later on. Chris Shen was actually the tackling coach 2 years previous to me. He was there. I believe this is correct. So I was there 9, 10. He would have been there 8, 7. He would have been, I think he was there 6, 5, maybe.
Right. Yep.
Anyway, so he informed me of this a little bit later. So here's my baptism of fire into any form of football tackling ever. I have a lineup in front of me. Current, or the reigning Brownlow medalist Adam Cooney, Jason Ackermanis. This is terrible. Yeah, Boydie, Gian Syracuse, Brad Johnson. So I've got and extras all in front of me, right? So I'm sort of standing there, and then they brought in sort of like 30 rookies, and these guys are now playing, and they ended up becoming some of my boys. So you're looking at Andres Everett. Was he there at that time? I'm not too sure, but a few of the other guys. Yeah. So they were sort of there. This was 2009. Just did a quick sample. So walk in. I've got like a sheet prepared. I know exactly what I'm doing, right? And I walk in, and Willow turns around to me. He just goes, mate, you got about 30 minutes. They'll be doing this and doing that, right? And obviously they weren't getting their structures right. 30 minutes turns into 20 minutes. 20 minutes turns into 15 minutes. 15 minutes turns into, mate, you got about 7.5 minutes.
Right.
Oh, shit. What am I going to take? How do I condense a 30-minute thing? Yeah. And it's sort of like, by the time you do the intro... Yeah, right. So anyway, I'm like... So all of a sudden, I've had to tear it up and I'm on the fly for 7.5 minutes in front of elite AFL players, right? My background's in rugby. My background's in judo. Jason Ackermanis is a state level... He played state rep rugby union for Queensland.
Oh, really?
First and foremost. Absolutely. Right. So he did that.
Is he a winger or something?
Absolutely. I'm not too sure, but he played state rep rugby for Queensland. Now, he would have been exposed back then, I believe they were doing it. So I believe John Donoghue was up at Brisbane at the time as well. Yeah. So he would have been exposed to John Donoghue as well. Right. And so here's his little no-name grappler called Balbangs from Juno. Right. And he's just giving me, like, he's just lasering through me, as in like, whatever, mate. Come on, mate. Like, I know this. Right? And to the end where I'm just about to go, right, let's do it. He's like, yep, let's go, boys. I'm like, oh no, oh, this isn't good. So anyway, they go through their staff, and then it's like, thanks, mate, all that sort of stuff. Brad Johnson was really kind, really nice. So was Cooney. So was everyone else. I'm not taking anything away from Acker. I'm actually not, but I sort of found out why a little bit later. So. Then from there, did a little bit, stayed in touch with the club. The club stayed in touch with me. I then provided them with, I think it was a 6 to 8 week program for their 2010 pre-season, right, which was their first and third year rookies. Yep. So pretty much, back then, and these were the guys, so Andres Everett, Josh Hill, Liam Jones, a few, Roughhead. So all those sort of guys. So got to do all that.
I'm glad we got to somebody that's still at the club.
Absolutely. So got to do a little bit with those guys for a while, which was a lot of fun. Yeah. And it was a different entry. And in comparison to what I do now, completely different.
Right.
Absolutely. Completely different. I showed them a little bit of stuff, and it was based at the judo club and all that sort of stuff. And But I showed them the certain styles of technique and things like that. But what they were looking at was a little bit different to what's offered now, anyway. Yeah. So coming back to why perhaps Jason Ackermanis didn't like me so much was that I had actually replaced Jason Ackermanis as the tackling coach. Even for that short period of time. So whatever they did, So unbeknownst to me, because I was having lunch with Chris Shem one day, like very early on when we first met, and we were just sort of trading football stories. And he turns around and he goes, "Oh no, because I finished there, right? I finished there at this time." And he goes, and he just like looked at me and he goes, "You do know that Jason Ackermanis was sort of doing the in-house tackling, don't you?" And I went, no.
And everything falls into place.
Absolutely. So, so pretty much, I spent a lot of time doing the, so I did their pre-season. I was there for I wasn't there for long. Yeah. And that's the way most football, I think it's changing now, where there are certain clubs where it's a lot more often. But generally, like Daniel Kelly was with North Melbourne for a long, long time. I think he lost the job to John Donoghue because Daniel had to go to when he went to do Tough Enough.
Okay. Yeah.
So, when he went to go Ultimate Fighter. When he went to go and do Ultimate Fighter, it was around about pre-season, last year's pre-season.
That makes sense.
So then John Donoghue got the job. But Daniel's been there for years. Yeah. And basically it's a 6, 7, 8 week gig. That's it. And then you're out. So
what sort of things will you run through in regards to how will you apply judo to AFL?
So for me, I talk about just the movement, just the body movement, understanding where your postures are and where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are.
I thought like stoppages would be the real key where you can use your body strength and things like that, about how trying to sort of get away from taggers and things like that, especially positioning to block. So when the ruckman's got their set patterns they're running, you can block to let the ruckman tap down to open space and have people run through and things like that.
Definitely. Look, you get into that sort of stuff and you do train for it. But honestly, when they employ you to be a tackle coach, they just want you to do tackling. That's it. They'll either there's sort of two ways of thinking about it. You either put the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart. It's one or the other. If you really got all the time in the world, you get them on a mat and you grapple them. And you just get them, because then all of a sudden when you start to show the technique, everything seems to go really well. Yeah. Whereas if I walk into a club and I've got 3 sessions, I just do I do it like that much. People.
A tiny
about
bit.
a very small bit of
2.7
grappling.
centimetres, apparently.
Absolutely. I'm not going to mention the shower. Anyway,
and now you're back on Ackermanis, you bastard. Mark that time, we might need to remove that.
Staying in.
So then from there, whereas I'll do just a very small bit of grappling, and it's just designed to get them to. It's actually designed to get them to participate in the actual tackling drills that we do. So it's amazing when you go to either a junior club or a development club or even some seniors clubs. You mention the word tackling, and you just see this shudder, oh my god, what's going to happen? Yeah. So you sort of trick them into being a bit physical, and then we go into it. I do a lot of tackle. My rugby background is massive for it, and combining my understanding of rugby and how that works, and combining it with little judo tricks, sort of really, it's very different from what I hear from people that have been exposed to either Melbourne Storm guys and that sort of stuff. Some of the stuff that I touch on completely different to some of the other stuff. So I sort of come from a different realm, but at the same time I complement at the same time. So. Yeah.
But what you'd also teach with judo is how to take a tackle as well. You see so often, you see guys getting a regulation style tackle and they stick an arm out or something and they end up tearing an elbow.
The hard part about that is, and it's all about due diligence, you try and teach them, don't do this, don't do that. But when you've got 30 minutes or an hour to get stuff through, you sort of, it is. If I could have my way, and if there's anyone out there that's doing junior footy or anything like that, get all your kids into judo, honestly, at the start. But that's a hard part. So you think about it from anyone that cross-trains. You're always going to cross-train, not to the detriment of your number one sport.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the biggest, the biggest, hardest part.
But in saying that, I think it's interesting the role of tackling coach at this present time, because you've seen with the NFL when they've had their
concussions,
their problem with concussions, and I know there's been some coaches in might be in high school levels. They've actually employed rugby coaches to teach them how to tackle rugby style, because you're not putting your head in first, you're putting like shoulder into your body.
Oh, I've heard some,
and they've had massive success not only in reducing head injuries, but having more effective tackling.
Absolutely.
And also providing spillages and things like that, and getting recovering fumbles.
Absolutely. Look, the thing that's really faced, there's a contradiction in terms in football. So whenever you go to footy and you just say, okay, what's the first thing you're taught to do when you're about to be tackled? And every person will pretty much put the ball over their head.
Get their arms free.
Okay. So arms are free. Now you go and tell a 10-year-old kid, grab an arm, pin an arm. The first thing they're going to try and do is pin that arm that's over his head.
Right.
Natural reaction, I'll pull the ball down. So then you smack me in the head. It's a high tackle. It's free. So whereas and without and we live in such a PC world. Where violence or, in inverted commas, aggressive sports that are contact can be seen as detrimental. I come from the old school. I do. This guy, Adrian Bolton, that I speak of, was mad. We used to. This is how we used to train. One of the gentlemen on our team, Cameron, I think his name was. Sorry, Cameron, if you... it was. No. His father owned a farm, I think, in Coldstream, and he would bring a Hessian bag filled with hay that would weigh approximately 80 to 100 kilo.
Jesus.
Right? They would put a ball underneath that.
Right.
And this is in the day where you could ruck your opponent. So you could ruck. You could actually
Ruck.
Absolutely. So you
Not
could,
far off.
Absolutely. So you could. So and the idea was that when we'd come out of a scrum machine, around to a ruck machine, and we would have to have both bag and ball out. Pardon me, within approximately 5 seconds.
Damn.
Right. And we would work like there was no tomorrow. And we were taught how to tackle and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
I come from the old school. This guy used to hold a stick. Right? Actually, he could probably be...
No good story for that.
He could probably be sued for this because I don't think corporal punishment was allowed.
We could be sued for half the shit we say on here.
But it's bolts. I love bolts. And I was one of... We actually used to play to spite him.
Right.
He was that coach. He was that coach.
Yeah.
I love this guy to death. And a lot of my contemporaries, if I might... if any of my contemporaries that played with me in the 88, 89 Yarra Valley squad that ever listened to this, they'll probably be sitting there just like, Bolts was a prick and all that. But I actually love him. I think he was a psychological genius.
Yeah.
But we played despite him. And he would hold a stick so that you would go that low.
Yep.
Right. Yep.
Right. If the stick hit you on the head going in, it was bound to be hitting you on your ass as you went in as well. So that sort of, he needed it low and he drive through and all that sort of stuff. So I come from the old school.
Yep.
And if you're going to play physical sport, be prepared to get hurt in some way, shape or form, or be prepared for it to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So think about it from this perspective. And I do see some coaches shudder when I teach this. It's a point where if you... Why teach a kid how to pin an arm, right?
Yeah.
Which is part and parcel of footy, right? First and foremost. When his arms are over his head and a good shoulder in his guts, which is where it will naturally happen. As much as you teach kids, aim for the hips, aim for the hips, aim for the hips.
Yep.
They'll end up, in judo, we've sort of got this this attitude of overcompensate to underachieve. So train to hit, at training, you train to put your shoulder in their hip.
Yeah.
But game day, you're going to hit them maybe breadbasket.
Yeah.
You put your shoulder in the breadbasket, they're not going to lift that ball up very much longer.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where the natural pin of the arm comes from.
Right.
And what's more, if I do put my shoulder in your breadbasket, that ball will actually stay where it is, and you go backwards.
Yeah.
I'm thinking first quarter of the grand final last year, Jared Ruffhead.
Jared Ruffhead's tackle, absolutely.
Dan Hanbury.
I teach that. I teach that style of tackling. And it's very rugby based, but then there's also stoppage style tackling, which is static style, which is very judo based.
Yeah.
And little things like that. And
I just want to see a Tominagi at a stoppage this weekend. That'd be fantastic.
I'd love to see someone like grabbing grips and then going for a proper legit judo throw instead of just push.
If
shove,
you have a look,
honestly,
go and have a look at some of the melees now, and a lot of them do.
Yeah.
A lot of them do. There'll be there'll be like Cianagis or Morito Cianagis and stuff like that. There'll be guys like doing Hizaguruma, so they'll just pull down and put a leg out and try and flick them over. Absolutely, it's there. It's prevalent.
Yeah.
But it is that thing where any coach that is coaching from an outside of sport, so you're bringing a sport into a sport.
Yep.
All you want is time, but you can never get it.
Yeah.
There's 1,000 different things that you could possibly do. But and coming back to the attitude in relation to protecting the head and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I always try and teach the guys, Joel Selwood for mine is arguably one of the most courageous players out there. But I honestly believe that
he'll end up in a wheelchair.
He will.
Yeah.
And I fear for what he does. And in some ways, and being in the development league, and I've got to really watch my words here.
Yep.
Being in the development area, people look up to him for what he does.
Yeah.
And people mimic him for what he does.
Yep.
Now, unfortunately, you get kids that are leading with their head
Yeah.
the way they do. That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
All Joel Selwood has to do, in my opinion, is turn to the side a little bit, just the slightest bit, and lead with his shoulder.
Yep.
And his head's protected.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
And he probably won't cop as many concussions or what have you as he gets. You have a look at him. You have a look at his face after every game.
Yeah.
Have a
just
look.
bleed in the first quarter.
Absolutely. And I'm not taking anything away from him. It's his style of play, and good luck to him.
It works.
It's a matter of health for everyone coming through the ranks as well.
Absolutely. But I think the one thing that when you teach, and we were always taught this from a rugby perspective, because you can't knock the ball on.
Yeah.
If you step over the ball, so your foot's in front of the ball as you pick it up.
Yep.
Now, the minute I do that, technically by rights, if I turn my foot parallel to the ball,
Yep.
that actually makes me come in shoulder first,
Yeah.
which protects me from the oncoming vehicles that are about to smash through me.
And some of those vehicles are Mack trucks.
Also, it's easier to flick off a pass too.
Absolutely. And what that can come down to is that's the way it needs to be taught at the junior level, is that lead with your shoulder.
Yeah.
You can still look.
Yeah.
You can still look and see with your head, but your shoulder should take the
nice little
impact.
shield.
Because it's almost like that boxing stance where you tuck your chin in so that if you get hit, you're protected.
Absolutely.
You're not going to have lots of travel time. Whereas same as your shoulder, you're tucked in, you're coming in.
And the worst part about it too is you watch kids, they'll lead with their head, and then right at the point of impact, they'll actually lower it.
Yeah.
And then that basically what they're doing now is basically they're just putting their spine in a nice
Nice
perfect
little straight line.
for someone to go bang
impact.
into. And that's not a good thing. So,
There's a price to pay eventually.
I found like the rule, especially with Joel Selwood, it seems like it's sort of the rules have facilitated someone that courageous to put their head over the ball and get rewarded for it like that, and taking those clips. And like we found with the concussion case coming out of the NFL, I don't know if you've read much about it, but they've actually got like a bank where they'll store a brain bank where they'll store dead people's brains, and they've noticed that it's not so much the concussions you get that knock you out; it's these little knocks that you'll take. They'll build up and build black spots in the brain.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's always to look at like Joel Selwood and say that's courageous, but the true change has come from the base level in teaching kids the right way at a very young age, and saying, look, these guys do it this way, but you're young and you've got to protect yourself, and having that sort of approach towards safety as well as being able to emulate your heroes and things like that.
That being said, and just obviously I am watching what I'm saying, and I'm not denying it. Joel Selwood isn't the only person that does it. It's just the fact where he is synonymous with it, and he has created, and quite rightly so, he's created an effective way to get a free kick. And also too, when he doesn't get the free kick, he just gets in there because he is getting low and things do work. Yeah. There's multiple ways that you can milk a free.
Yeah.
I've taught it.
The thing is, like, it's a free kick, but it's not a free kick.
No, he's knee high to a grasshopper.
It's a free kick, but there's nothing cheap about it. He's putting his head there and getting messed up for every one of those free kicks.
There'll be a price to pay one day.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
If honestly, if I was going to write an article on it, and if they wanted to actually, for want of a better word, if they wanted to actually decrease the injury rate at tackling or decrease a generalised injury rate in the AFL, in my opinion, forward motion, so pushing the back style, needs to be banned, or when tackling, pushing the back needs to be negated.
Right. Yep. So that you're not having that force.
Absolutely. So basically, from there, I should be able to tackle an opponent forward with forward momentum from the back.
Yep.
Okay.
Only as a tackle, because you would then stop AC joint issues because of the old school in inverted commas sling tackles.
Yep.
Because you have to stop the person and then you're spiking them on their shoulders. Yep. So there goes your sling tackle position. Okay.
Spear tackle as well.
Spear tackle's gone. Yeah. Then from there also too, you're going to end up decreasing knee injuries because basically a lot of the guys, the old knee drop from behind to drag the person down. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Because if you actually have a look at it, I challenge anyone to go and watch a game where someone is tackled from behind. And this is the current. I believe it's the current, and I should know. The current thing is that if you have forward momentum going forward, it is a push in the back.
That is the current rule.
Go and find me a player who is not moving forward.
Yep.
Right. That gets tackled, that does not continue to move forward in any way, shape, or form. Whether the person is standing at their side, whether the person does it with that perspective.
Exactly.
Well, you see sometimes they actually dive forward, and it's kind of embarrassing when the guy misses the tackle and you see them dive forward rugby try style.
I've legitimately seen it, and I've worked with it, where guys have come to me afterwards and they've sort of said, look, as soon as I put my hands on him and his face was in the ground, he's just like dropped.
Yeah.
And we're just calling it the drop now. So it's that point where you teach them a little rollover instead. So as they go, if I tuck under, but these are the things where you don't get. You got to have the time to do that, and you try and teach a kid that's never really done a forward roll to trust you to tuck your head under the guts of another bloke, and get his momentum and flick him over, and they look at you like you're insane. Like, what are you?
Like, I'll just push him in the back.
Absolutely.
Do you find yourself screaming at the television sometimes, like when you see some of the boys you've taught play? And you're going, what the fuck are you doing? I taught you how to do this one.
I know. Always when the good ones are there. I haven't. I coached him like 5 years ago, but that's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
I
that was
was
my
gonna
tackle.
Was Brian Lake at the Dogs when you were there?
Yes, he was.
So-
He was injured at the time, so,
So
he
his-
was thankfully.
So he was scared.
No,
So were you yelling at the screen when he was choking Petrie, going, "That's not what I fucking taught you to do"?
no. Now, from a grappler's perspective,
Horrible choke.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
that was
that was
not
terrible.
on. If you watch, and the name of the actual choke he was looking for escapes me from a judo perspective. But if you watch, he had the wrong side of the. So basically, what he was looking to do was actually use Drew's jumper against him.
Yep.
But he had the wrong side of the jumper.
Yeah.
And I'm just like sitting there, just going. I was like, and people are like looking, and there was all that. And I'm like going.
There's nothing.
Come on,
Yeah.
Isn't it funny? Like anybody with grappling, it was
like,
the
you should be
worst.
embarrassed.
Absolutely.
It was the worst event that had ever happened in the AFL to everyone else, and we're looking at it going, that's pretty piss weak.
Everyone else was a missed armbar. Like, Petrie, get your legs in there.
Absolutely.
But that's why I think grip fighting would be really good for like breaking tags and the clearances around stoppages and that, where especially like Gary Ablett and people Koch and that, who just get manhandled at the stoppages. If you learn how to properly control wrists and grips and break grips, it'd have to be really advantageous to move around.
Definitely. And what it comes down to, again, it comes down to time, time. And that's the thing where, you know, you might come back. So for example, I might turn up to Calder next week and they'll turn around and they go, this happened. Can you deal with this? Or, they need this. Or we weren't sticking these tackles or what have you. Can we deal with that tonight?
Yep.
And it's like, okay, done. Whereas I might have come in wanting to do something completely different.
Right.
And it's that sort of thing where you've got to do it by the fly.
Yep.
Yep.
And it is. It's real. When you've got all the time in the world.
Yeah.
And it's that thing too, when you think about it from a jiu-jitsu perspective or a judo perspective, when you're shown one thing.
Yeah.
You don't imagine us all becoming like Dan grades, and it's like, well, this week we learned Ogoshi.
Yeah.
Next week we learn Osoto. Are we doing this again? No.
No.
It's like, all right, okay. And then you can't expect them to go out and play and put it in that concept or that perspective. So, yeah.
I think some of it too, like it's a disrespect for the skill. Because if you went to, well, let's reverse it. Say you went to a judo club and said, I'm going to teach you to do a torpedo punt. I show you how to hold the ball. I show you how to kick. And then I leave.
Yep.
You're not
After
going to be
15
kicking
minutes.
80-meter torpedoes. I mean, no one's going to ask me to teach anyone how to do a torpedo.
No one's going to ask me how to kick. No one's going to ask me how to kick either. Trust me.
So you work with the Bulldogs. You've done, I've seen you with the EFL. You've done the TAC.
Yeah,
you worked with a couple of teams with the TAC.
Absolutely.
You said Calder.
So I finished pretty much on the 2010. Finished up with Western Bulldogs. What happened there was apparently Brett Montgomery came back from Port Adelaide or Adelaide.
He played for Port.
And he'd also played for Western Bulldogs, I believe, and he was quite good apparently. And they brought him as an in-house, so he became the new Ackermanis. No, but he was a part of the coaching staff.
Yep.
So they kept that in-house. I just put some words out. Got in contact with Shane Sexton from the Western Jets and started there. Shane was fantastic, and again a very good mentor in relation to how football works.
Yep.
And don't hit your star too high, son. Do this, do that. So it was like, yep, no worries. I was there for 2 years. Very lean period back then.
Yep.
They were having a few. We didn't have super skilled sort of teams. And out of that, I had my 2 first ever draftees.
Yep.
And this is the thing, when you retire from sport, you live vicariously through those.
Absolutely.
That you teach.
That's why I have kids.
Yep. Absolutely. And Leon Cameron actually sort of coined it for me when, I remember the first day where I met him all, and he said, "These are your boys."
Yep.
And I still think of them that way.
Yeah, of course you do.
To be honest, like whether or not, it'd be interesting whether or not half of them would remember me.
I'm sorry. Like, if you're walking into a football club and they say, "Here's Sensei Bangs," they're going to remember that.
Oh, no. No one calls me Sensei Bangs. I hate Sensei Bangs.
Oh, you kidding me?
No.
I'd make my grocer call me Sensei Bangs.
I just came from it because my coach, Arthur, it was Arthur.
Yeah,
Arthur.
You see,
and he was embarrassed to be called Sensei, and I have people, and they do it out of the utmost respect. They call me Sensei Malcolm or Sensei Bangs, and it's like, please, no, just Malcolm. No. It's all good, And that's not to say that people that demand to be called Sensei.
Everyone's got their own style.
Absolutely,
that's fine.
Absolutely. But yeah, coming back to that. So started at Western Jets. Was there for a couple of years. Had my first 2 ever, one draftee and one national. So one draft and one rookie draft. which was Will Hoskin Elliott
to
Greater Western Sydney,
GWS.
and also Adam Kennedy.
Okay, yep.
So, smooth, as they call it. So those are my first two. And from there, thank you. From there, 2 years there. Then basically, and it was quite interesting. I don't know if you heard this morning. There's the players, the PA, the AFL PA, talking about
equalisation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So anyway, I heard Eddie Maguire on his usual. And I got to admit, I didn't sort of agree with him, and then I heard one thing, and he's 100% correct about it. The AFL actually really do need to actually, and they say they're doing it, but then I don't know whether they are or they aren't. But I was a victim of it, for want of a better word, funding down, or not funding enough.
Yep.
So after their last, because they're now currently bidding for the next set of rights because that's coming up. Now I was at the Western Jets when those rights. When the last rights came through,
bargaining.
when the last bargaining.
So sorry, are we talking broadcast rights or collective
sorry,
bargaining?
the last broadcast rights came in.
Yep.
Now that was a record broadcast rights for right. So now the TAC Cup has been and is now 60+% of AFL players are drafted from that.
Yep.
So here is me at the 2011 dinner. At Western Jet, at the Western Jets, handshake, and I love this old school stuff. Handshake deal, over the Shane Sexton, see you next year, blah blah blah. This is your price, done. Handshake deal, not a problem.
Nice.
There's this huge thing about it's $1 billion this and billions of dollars that, right? And I get a phone call from Shane Sexton 4 weeks later. Malcolm, this is a phone call I don't want to have with you. Yeah, and I'm like, what?
Budget's cut.
And he just turned around to me. He just goes, mate, I can't afford you this year. And he just said, you're not the first to get the call, and you won't be the last.
Yeah. Yep.
And generally, it's always the part-time coaches. It's always the specialised coaches who are the first to go.
Yeah.
And I was devastated. No, I didn't know what to do. Yeah. And anyway, he couldn't get into it because he had to sack everybody and go and do what he did.
Yeah.
I put out an SOS call to the Eastern Rangers.
Yep.
Because I lived around the corner.
Yep.
And wonderful man by the name of Anthony Parkin took my call. Sort of alluded to the fact of, you're the guy, which is pretty cool. I don't know whether he's just being nice, but he just said, look, look, and he explained it to me, and he just goes, I've just come from that meeting, and he explained to me, and he said, we've got no money.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Now, I think 2 weeks beforehand, AFL had just signed $1 billion deal or whatever it was for all their broadcasting rights.
Yeah.
Their budgets weren't cut, so to speak. Basically, what happened was, here's your budget. Fantastic. Now, the AFL used to buy their away jerseys or something like that.
Okay.
All of a sudden, no. The club has to buy their away jerseys. This has to happen. You have to pay for Dartfish. You have to pay for this. You have to pay for that.
Yep.
And so they were all of a sudden, they're like, well, hang on a second. Technically, So all of a sudden, people like myself couldn't be employed.
Yep.
Parko, being a great bloke, immediately turned around and said, ring Mark Smart at the Oakley Chargers. He might also be interested in this.
Yep.
I'll get back to you. We'll find some money.
Yep.
So he found some money, Smarty found some money, and they ended up utilising me. I was with Eastern predominantly in 2012 and just for a couple of times in 2013, which was their premiership year. I was with Oakley Chargers in 2012, 2013, 2014. 2012 and 2014 were their premiership years.
Yep.
Wow.
And Calder Cannons I've been with, 2013, 2014, 2015, and they made last year's grand final.
I was going to say, they run us up.
Hard day. I was sitting dead middle. And it was for me, it was just sitting there just going, great tackle. Damn, you're making a break.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was. I actually have a photo of the game where I sat. I found between the two boxes, there is one seat. And it is dead middle. It is dead middle right between it. I wore none of the gear. I wore none of each other's gear. Managed to get into both club rooms, was able to get into both club rooms, talk to, see the boys and all that sort of stuff, both after and it was really a very debilitating day. I really wanted to, I remember celebrating 2012.
Yeah.
It was like jumping up and down and going, yeah. And then I watched these guys and Oakley I'd been with for a long time. That was my third year.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys are developing quite well. And then, just watching the desolation, the upset on the Calder boys. So I sort of spent a lot of time with the Calder boys more than anything else.
Yeah.
And then just rolled into Oakley and said hi and jump back out. But and then since then sort of tripped onto some had the opportunity to work with the Casey Scorpions last year. Box Hill Hawks this year. For a couple of years.
Look after them.
Didn't they win a premiership too?
Well, that runner-up last year.
So managed a chance to just do a couple of little things with them. And again, it's just a couple of gigs.
Yeah.
And then you just see, and you might get a phone call in the month or something, or I'll ring them and say, how's it all going? And they'll say, oh, look, can you come back down? But it all comes down to budget.
But obviously, the utility for that sort of training is there. Like people see the value in it. It's just a matter of having comprehensive funding for these sorts of teams where they can afford to specialise in those areas full time.
Absolutely, and I think it's also about how far do you push the athlete. Also, because that's the thing when you look at it. Brian Taylor, many years ago, because he was a kicking coach.
Yep.
The old sports science guys, they were telling guys, you can't kick more than this, you can't kick more than that. Well, that's what it's about.
Yeah, exactly.
We come from, in judo, there's a European circuit.
Yeah.
So pretty much, there were times where if you flew overseas or what have you, you'd fight one weekend.
Yep.
You'd get up after commiserating or doing whatever, and there'd be like some god of judo doing a demonstration or a thing, and then that was a way to go and pay back the bastard that things like that sort of stuff. But then you'd go and watch a demonstration, you'd be as sore as bugger, you'd probably be hungover too, whatever it might be. But because you've just damn it, I lost or whatever. And then those people would then probably get ready for a fight maybe a week later or 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
Yep.
These guys are, I think, I don't know, his name escapes me. He's the current guy at Port Adelaide, the strength and conditioning coach, the sports science guy. He's, it'll come to me. I can't remember, but he's a new guru. He apparently took a lot of these guys to task. Got them into it. It'll come to me as soon as you say it.
Yeah. So I only remember this because I know that they were chasing Dean Solomon as their defensive coach.
Don't think everyone knows that.
Well, they do.
but he was out at Aston Villa, or I think Aston Villa.
Okay.
No, I don't know. But he was doing EPL and all that sort of stuff. And here's teams that are playing 300 games a year.
Darren Burgess.
Getting paid 300 million.
Darren Burgess.
Darren Burgess. That's the one.
So I beat the iPhone.
I love that feeling.
So with that, he came back and he really took him to task, and he seems to be taking away a little way. It seems to, and it's only from an outsider's perspective, and sort of hearing it, he seems to be taking a little bit of cotton wool away from the players.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And I heard rumours that there were some really high level, well respected players complaining that we've done this already.
Yeah.
Now from a martial arts perspective, you try and tell a kid, hey, I used to do like 300 uchikomi,
exactly.
or 100 uchikomi here, and it's like, what, you did that how many times? That's really boring. It's like,
hey, it's perfect now, though.
Exactly.
Do you enjoy kicking a footy? Yeah. Well, if I told you now that you had to kick the footy 1,000 times,
exactly,
they'll go, oh man. But they'll probably kick a footy 120 times.
But the thing is, like, what I've noticed, especially when I worked in casinos, I used to work at Crown. I was a high roll dealer, so you get to meet lots of like famous people, any athletes.
How long were you a high roll dealer for?
7 years.
We've got some stories. We've planned some podcasts.
You might know Hernan.
First name or last name?
First name. I don't know his last name.
Hernan.
My brother-in-law's best mate. He was a high roll dealer up there as part-time. He owned a
I
pizza
definitely
store
know
as well.
If he was a high roll mahogany, I'd definitely know.
I don't know if he'd finished by then. He might have finished by then.
Yeah.
But he had some serious stories too.
I started in 2007, so...
Yeah, no, probably not then. Probably not. Yeah. But Sorry.
That's all right.
Because I was waiting for him to go, Hernan.
The worst thing is that you generally don't know people by last names or whatever. No. It's whatever they get put on their name badge, and that's it. That's the only way you know people.
Probably just sort of put George just to piss everyone off.
Old mate or whatever, or, whatever. I forgot where I was going with that.
So anyway, you're saying when you do something a lot of times, and that repetition, and as a casino dealer, you meet a lot of athletes.
Yeah, you meet lots of athletes, and what I noticed is the difference between those ones who are the best athletes, and I'm talking like
world class.
They've met all the like Roger Federer, the best tennis players, dealt to them all. They've got that single-minded determination where boring isn't a thought comes in the head. Is that do they want to win?
Yep.
Yes.
This is what
will this help them win? Yes, that's it. That's
They
the
can
only question
grind.
that comes into it.
No, fair call.
And the thing is, that mentality works really good in achieving what you want to achieve on your given field, whether it be sports or whatever else. But generally, it makes you a real big cunt to deal with in general society. So, because you're just like real short-tempered, if it's not my way, then just fucking don't waste my time.
Absolutely.
And so they're really hard to deal with. But that skill is just so, it seems inherent in being the best. And you look at Ronda Rousey, where it's just single-minded determination. And you look at her going into a fight, and you look at the other fighter, and you know straight away, they're not on the same level.
No,
you can see that dedication, that determination, just that single-mindedness.
That mania.
Yeah, and I think about Michael Jordan, where obviously the best athlete, arguably of our generation, or the most known, but from all accounts, he's a real fucking asshole.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like real,
absolutely.
like,
They always said that
Out.
he had a fist fight with Steve Kerr at training once because he didn't think he was putting in enough.
Yeah, I remember saying he's going to bash up Luke Longley because he didn't catch his pass.
Yep.
He goes, "You drop that pass next time, we're fucking fighting in the car park." And he goes, "You never questioned it. You knew if you didn't catch that pass, he would fight you."
Wow.
And
It's pretty a big man who'll pick a fight with a 7'2" bloke.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, but at
And-
the same time,
granted-
hey, how many punches do you reckon Luke Longley's going to throw at the bloke who's getting? He's got the statue at the
He's
front.
putting rings on his fingers.
No. Who walks out there with his minders and goes, Bieber style, boys.
Yeah,
Bieber
exactly.
style. You go.
But I come back, I think about like Jason Ackermanis, where he was equally as good on his right foot as his left foot.
Yep.
He didn't kick all those times on his left foot because he liked it.
Yep.
He
No.
kicked because he knows this is going to make me a better
Absolutely.
player. And you put in that time and you just do it, not because it's boring, because you know your end goal, this is going to get you there.
Absolutely.
It still drives me nuts when I see an AFL player wheel around with the other foot.
Who can't kick on the opposite.
I don't.
But we're going to see that. We're going to see that. And this is the unfortunate part about sport to a point now where we're identifying athlete.
Yeah.
We're identifying athletic potential and then teaching the game around
Yeah.
it.
See, and
Exactly.
that's where I think it goes in spurts because we had, when Koutafidis came along, he was the new prototype. We're going to get an
Yeah.
athlete, teach him footy,
Yeah.
and then it's still great though. There's still room for a Stuart Dew.
Absolutely.
Or
A
Gary
left
Ablett.
leg attached to a bloke.
You look at Gary Ablett walking down the street, there's no way you'd think elite sports star.
Yeah.
This looks like a bloke. Yeah, maybe he works out a bit, but
Absolutely.
you wouldn't peg him as just absolute domination on an AFL field.
So, and I think getting back to the tackling, it's one thing that I've noticed this year, especially how good it is,
Yeah,
and how
yeah.
hot they've been on holding the ball. It's just been, it's made it so much better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's becoming a stoppage play game now.
Yep.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
that thing. It's all about stoppages. That being said, I think I watched it was the first. Yeah, it was Richmond Carlton that opened the
Yeah, we were there.
You were there?
The first quarter, but maybe about the first couple of minutes,
Yeah.
I just went, this game's going to be boring because it was just stoppage,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was like, oh, come on, get the flea. And I just started thinking, oh my God, I'm helping ruin the game.
Game that you love.
And it was. I was like sitting there just going, oh no, don't be like this. Could you imagine 100 minutes of that? You're like,
It's like teaching Floyd Mayweather defense.
but it,
Shit, I ruined boxing.
it's just so true. I think, and that's the mentality now. It is about the stoppage. If they have the ball, if they actually have the ball, create a stoppage to at least get a 50-50 back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if they've got prior opportunity, then you're going to get the ball back anyway.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
and that's where the mentality is now, and it is real stoppage play stuff. And I've had to adjust the way that I teach the tackling stuff in relation to, well, if it's a stoppage and they get the ball, we create another stoppage really quick.
Yeah.
We don't muck around and just get it in. So that's the mentality that I try and pass on to my guys in relation to the tackling as well. So, and again, I'm that big believer of it, and it's old, it's cliched as hell, and go out for the first 15 minutes, hit them real hard. No.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in that because if you go out and instill dominance and physical, not fear, but if you intimidate,
the presence.
To steal a phrase from one of our friends, impose your will.
absolutely, quote unquote, absolutely. If you go out there and do that to a team, and then that team is now all of a sudden looking over their shoulder as to where you're going to be when you touch a ball or something like that. You can then go and play your game. And then what's more is that as long as you still have that in as the of in inverted commas the offensive team, if you still have that sitting on the boil, so that when they try and go, oh, okay, well, now they're playing the game, we'll try it, and you go bang again.
Yeah.
It's going to take you less time to get in their brain again.
See, that makes sense because it's not just the once, you've got to do it again.
Absolutely.
Which is exactly why
Double
Luke
tap.
Hodge and Jared and Jordan Lewis, so you support that.
teamwork.
It was good teamwork, wasn't it? As a passionate North Melbourne man.
3 weeks. Come on. 3 weeks. Are you kidding me?
I know.
A forearm slashed elbow to the jaw. I'm like,
It was lucky
They
that-
punished him, didn't they? He should have been one at the most.
But it looked like Lewis was trying to create like just a clear plane across that dude's shoulders.
I'm really gonna hurt myself with this one, but I think it's true. If it was Lindsay Thomas he hit, he probably got no weeks because Lindsay dives too much. Lindsay, but like 3 weeks. I honestly thought he'd go for 5.
Yeah.
If Jack Zeeble did it, he would have got 20.
But
Jack Zeeble would have.
The hardest part was being in the tribunal the same week as May from Gold Coast.
Yeah.
Who got 3 weeks. And like, I'm like you, I'm old school. For me, that was play on.
Yeah.
And I can understand why I give a free kick, but give that dude 3 weeks for that.
But why did he challenge it though? I mean, because you've gone the bump and you've nicked his chin. You know it's weeks.
But common sense has to play a role. You know what I mean? You can't just say, this is
Says who?
Richard, and that's what the rules say, so that's what has to be.
I think it should be like in the court of law, if there's a slander thing, truth is an absolute defence. I think if you can prove your only goal was the ball, that should be an absolute defence. But we're kind of getting a bit off the beaten
There's
path.
no off topic on these podcasts. No such
We're in the
thing.
weeds.
The biggest problem with the bump, and since I started with this, the bump's been dead. It's been alive. It's been dead. It's been alive. Right? Buddy almost killed it single-handedly. His bumps were shocking.
Yeah.
All right. And 9 times out of 10, it's all down to the actual technique.
Of course it is.
And I don't think people teach technique to bump.
Yeah.
I do. If asked, I'll show how to do it properly. And it's safe as houses.
Yep.
And it's arguably, and I shouldn't say this, but in my opinion, I think it's to a point. If you are a bit iffy on doing a tackle, if you can bump.
I agree.
Yeah, the bump's sort of the kid that's not so confident to tackle, but I'm going to take you off the ball anyway. And you can use that really, really well, and it's getting the technique correct.
Yeah,
and one thing that footy players don't seem to be able to do, and watch, put a football down on the ground, just in front of a footballer, and ask him to pick it up.
Yeah.
He will not bend his knees.
Yeah.
Because we're always taught you bend your knees and you lead with your hips.
Yeah.
Put your hips over the ball and pick it up.
Absolutely.
So anyone comes to hit you, it's a hip and shoulder. Your hip comes first, and then your shoulder comes through.
But from that perspective, what I'm saying is that most guys, as much as they're taught to do it,
Bend at the waist.
they won't. They always just just pick the ball up, and it's just like
Yeah.
and
Or
you're
put
like,
down one hand.
bend your knees, bend your knees.
I think the reason we were taught to do that is because we're playing country league football in Broken Hill
That's
against
fair
men
call.
who are pretty keen to lay you out.
And we were always taught like the cross from like trachea down to your
crucifix,
stomach and
absolutely.
across your shoulders.
Yep.
You aim within that little mark there.
Oh,
And we go hip, shoulder. So you get your hip there, shoulder goes there.
Yep.
And that was the old shirt front technique.
That's what we were taught. I
taught.
used to love watching Byron Pickett play until he went to Port Adelaide. Then I hated it. But his ability to intimidate with the bump as an offensive weapon.
he was hard.
You'd hear footsteps coming and players going, "Fuck that! I'm kicking this shit."
Absolutely, and that's a point where, and that's the one thing you got to remember from the bump perspective. It was called a hip and shoulder. It is known as a hip and shoulder. But when you look back at Buddy, it was just hip. It was just shoulder.
Yeah.
There was no hip, and that's half the battle. And if you can instill that into a kid, well, hang on, it's a hip and shoulder. If my hip hits their hip around that time, it will always keep you low.
Yep.
So
Yep.
therefore, you're going to be away from the head.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's the same sort of movement as we have with like
Anyone
a double
listen-
leg takedown kind of thing. You got to have your body vertical because if you're horizontal, you're going to get guillotined.
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm just going to
And
say that
posture.
anyone listening to that advice, the check to the mail at Zenith Sports Services.
Links on the website.
Absolutely.
We're going through the teams you've worked with. You've also touched on with the women's teams as well, with the Bulldogs.
A long time ago, just a quick dabble in was with the East Burwood Devils. They were the female team a while back, and did a little bit with Scoresby Women's as well, and it sort of dried up. A friend of mine. He's just a great bloke. He's one of the coaches out at Calder. I've become, become pretty cool. And he was actually asked to be their director of coaching out at the Melbourne University women's football team. So the Muggers, the wonderful Muggers. And
I've actually heard of them.
Absolutely, the great team. And they brought me over last year to do some sessions. brought me back again this year, and actually had to do a fundraiser and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
They were that excited. They were like,
Nice.
look, seriously, we need to get you over. Can we do this? Can we do that? Which
Beautiful.
was really great. They've been fantastic supporters. They're one of the first groups to tweet things, put things up, mention me, or mention the company, mention me, and all that sort of stuff, which is really good.
We'll be the second now.
Yeah, fantastic. I appreciate
We're on
it. But yeah, no. So started with the Muggers, and then with Mike Sandry, I think his name is Saundry, was the coach of the Muggers last year.
Yep.
Right.
And he was named one of the coaches of the women's Western Bulldogs team,
Oh, okay.
part of the national draft.
Yep.
Nice.
And he asked whether or not I could or couldn't
Yep.
go over and assist.
Yep.
And I did a tackling session with those guys last year.
Yep.
I've officialed them. I'm pleased to announce.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Real scope.
Exclusive.
Yeah,
Real
an
scope.
exclusive. I have been asked. I've been in touch with them again, and I've been asked to pretty much come back on board, which is
Nice.
great. So new coach, which was good.
Yep.
We were having a chat. I was out with the VWFL Super All Stars. They have
Right.
a team. They have a game against the Australian Defence Force girls.
Oh, okay.
Every
Damn.
around about Anzac Day. And so I did some tackling with those guys, and I'm currently working with the Victorian women's state team who will play Western Australia over the Queen's birthday weekend in Perth.
Right.
So I was doing a sort of a session out there, and a lot of the girls had all just been drafted. So I was having a bit of
Wow.
a chat, and some of them were Muggers, some of them I'd worked with at the Bulldogs previously.
Yep.
And one of the girls was sort of saying, "Oh, are you coming back?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, because it's not me.
Yeah.
It's called back, and we're just trying to work out when, where, or how. Because obviously it's like a 3-day camp,
Yeah.
and these girls are never going to. They don't play. They don't get a chance to train together and all that sort of stuff. They're coming
Yeah.
from all over. So you've got girls from WA, girls from everywhere coming
Yep.
into this draft to play, and
It's gaining legs too. I think they played 2 games this year, or is it 2 games next year?
no, I think it's 1 game this year, and
next year.
and,
Yep.
and maybe 2 next year. But also too, they're really pushing into it. The Calder Cannons youth girls team.
Okay.
Got, so basically, there will be a youth girls tack. They're trying to do that.
Right.
Sandringham, Dandy, Oakley. My Calder girls, Calder girls at the first ever carnival, smashed. They were actually nicknamed the Animals by other teams, which was brilliant. I think they
It would
played.
have just made your chest puff
Yeah,
out.
absolutely. I got a text message from one of the players, Maddie, and also the coach, and they were like, hey, we just won, blah blah blah. We won this carnival, and it wasn't an official carnival or anything like that.
Right.
But it just got back that these girls tackled. I keep getting spoken to about we've never seen girls tackle like that, especially at that age, which is great,
Yeah.
which is absolutely brilliant.
And
So-
I mean, it says something about what you're actually teaching. There must be some, obviously, validity to it. But how do you find the contrast between teaching the male footballers compared to the female? Because I would imagine that, obviously, the guys, they go through training their whole life, and this is a small part of what they're doing. But the girls, it must be, really exciting, and they're eager. And
Absolutely. I think the girls are more timid to a point.
Yep.
Just slightly. Then something just happens.
They snap. They
Like,
get
bang.
it gets good to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that as men, what we tend to do is if we don't understand it,
Yep.
smash it. so it's that old adage where, and I look at it from this way. I talk to a lot of players about it. You come home from work, you're really tired, door is locked. What do you do?
Smash it.
Yeah, you don't kick it in. Take the key out. Take the key out and open it.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on, you don't have a key. What do? Smash it. No. Go and check if the window's open or the back door.
Check the back door.
Yeah, check everything. Thank you, mate. So you do all these amazing things. You figure all this stuff out.
Yeah.
Most blokes are, and in AFL, they honestly think, and I'm being very stereotypical here.
We're probably going to agree with you, though.
I think it's getting out of it. I think it's starting to move away from it. But shoulder wise, they just think between their shoulders, their biceps, and their back,
Yeah.
I can anything, right?
Yeah.
No. And so
Squats.
you still get past that attitude. You got to try and get past that. And then if they can't get the technique right, and it's the same with jits, same with judo,
Yeah.
power through, right? So it's one or the other. Now power through can work. Nothing wrong with it.
But if they're bigger than you, then
Absolutely.
you're fucked. So-
Whereas women, from that perspective, they'll stand there and they'll listen to the technique and they'll get the
Yep.
technique right, and they just listen and listen and listen for that technique.
Yep.
and also too, I'm a fresh-faced young man. I unfortunately don't have the battle scars of a fighter. I don't look like a grappler by any stretch of the imagination. I just got that wonky ear, and
You got some cauliflower ears.
and half of it. No, I have none. I used to. I sort of regret it now. I sort of regret it now. I'm like, So what used to happen is, bang, you get it, and what I'd do is I'd ice it to buggery, and then I would get plaster of Paris, and I would actually plaster my ear.
Whoa.
And I would plaster it really, really, really tight, so as tight as it could. So then all of a sudden, so you've stopped the fluid, you've stopped the initial swelling, but it's going to swell anyway.
Yep. Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you put the plaster of Paris on as tight as possible, like a really tight sleeve. It's got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And it hurts like buggery, but
No collie.
I reckon that's some
Crappy
dedication
collie.
to not getting cauliflower ears.
How do you get it off?
crappy collie. So I'm just trying to. Yeah, that's about the biggest. This is about the biggest collie I've got. You can feel.
Oh, yeah.
You can see
That's
pictures
about
of
all
Mel
I've
online.
got. And whereas I do have stupid wonky ear.
That
and
one,
that's about it.
yeah.
So unfortunately, no. But yeah, it's that thing where from a female perspective, they just listen to they listen.
Yep.
And they catch on to it quicker because they
Yeah.
understand how it's going to work.
I guess when you don't just have that natural brute force instinct, you can step back from it a little bit.
Absolutely.
Trying to dick everything to death.
Yeah, exactly.
Then, absolutely. And then what happens is they pick the brute force and the technique together.
Yep.
Yeah.
But coming back to that, I don't look like a fighter. So all of a sudden, you've got that man thing, the slapping dicks at 10 paces sort of
Yep.
deal,
Yeah.
where it's who's this guy? What's this guy?
Fucking slap dicks at 10 paces up, yeah.
I'll smash him. I'll smash this cunt.
So if I had a broken nose and all that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
I'd probably get a lot
I
more.
spoke with a lisp and
Absolutely.
It doesn't take long to learn though.
Face tattoo.
What was it? I don't know. One of my favorite all-time movies. One that should never be put on when I'm drinking. The Magnificent Seven, where if you're not familiar with it, it's a group of Mexican farmers hired guns to protect them, and they're all out in the pub, and they're sort of sitting there with Yul Brynner and my main man Steve McQueen. He's just the ultimate cool. I actually had this is a freaky story. So we went to Man's Chinese Theatre.
Yep.
Yes.
I have a photo of me putting my hands in his hands. They fit.
really.
It was so surreal. It was so surreal. Absolutely.
This was
I
Cinderella.
am.
You get like a Shelby Cobra or something.
I
like that.
am. I am Steve McQueen. Anyway, and there's a guy that walks in, and one of the Mexican guys turns around and says, "Who's he? We need him." And he had all the scars in the face and stuff like that. And the first words were, "No, we need the man that put the scars on."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're the man that put the scars on.
No.
But he knows the bloke.
I'm the guy who told the story.
Absolutely.
That's Buscemi in
Desperado.
Desperado, the one that gets to tell the story.
Yeah.
The last one I wanted to touch on, because we've said you've gone to TAC, you've done the AFL, done the women's AFL, done the Eastern Football League.
I do their coaching program.
Yep.
So the one club coaches they have to come and get their accreditation. And
You've also done just recently the local wrestlers.
I knew it was going to come through.
Damn right, I put it
Absolutely.
on. So first off, what's your ring name?
Can't tell you.
Can't. Beautiful.
Can't tell you.
I was going to choose that name.
So first off, hang on. So they've got you in to do, I'm assuming, proper break falling.
No, definitely not. No. So basically, long story short, around about 2001, I dabbled and mucked around in the pro wrestling scene for about 15 years. Loved every minute of it. I'm a wrestling tragic.
We're from way back.
I was so devastated that Hulk Hogan was out here. I was up in New South Wales at the time.
Really?
It was brutal. That being said, pardon me, I've known a predominant amount of the wrestlers in Melbourne. So all the different wrestling I've known a lot of them that are still going around. Yep. It was at a bizarre time where I was really enjoying judo, but I wanted. Oh wow! Absolutely, it's really cool. It probably ruined judo a little bit for me because, when you wrestle, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's an interesting story I read. So I was reading Hulk Hogan's biography on one of my trips somehow, and I was reading it, and it was talking about how he went to his first ever class with the Japanese guy, and the guy basically broke his leg. It was old school.
That was the way they used to do it.
Old school shooter style. So anyway, when I rang these guys and said, can I come down? Yeah, come down for an assessment. I was like, all right. Righto. So I'm like I've gone to judo like extra time, doing heaps of groundwork, just getting my chokes on and getting everything right. I'm like, right. So I walk in, and no offense, Kenneth, if you're listening, the guy that was running the show at the time, very, very small guy, very, very, all right. And I'm thinking, right. And he's like, all right, let me show you. I'm thinking, where are they coming from? Where are these guys coming from? I'm ready to just, I'm going to, right. And so all of a sudden it was like, and then it was like, he's just showing me this stuff. And I'm like, and that's it.
I'm okay?
Like, absolutely. And it was just predominantly break falling and understanding that sort of stuff. And then they showed a couple of things, and it was quite funny how he went to hip toss me, and I didn't do it. I just went, and he's like, looked at me, he's like, no, oh, you're supposed to, oh, yeah. Right. So little things like that. And then from me doing that sort of stuff was sort of I was actually manhandling people. Yeah. So you had to learn in between. So, the reason that I like, and anyone that does listen to this that knows who I am, they know I'm a true believer in the old form of kayfabe. Yep. I'm an absolute true believer in it. And a couple of my characters were absolute kayfabe, and I love every minute of it. And I like the anonymity. I really do. Yeah. That being said, off mic, we might chat. I might show you a couple of things. But so I pretty much wrestled on and off for probably about 13 years.
Okay, nice.
And just came in and came out. The thing with wrestling, as with anything, if you don't train, you don't do well. And that was the thing where when I was younger, when I didn't have children, when I had, I don't know, copious amounts of energy where for some bizarre reason I could survive on
cocaine or something.
I was able to, I'd go training here and then there, and I'd slide into a wrestling gig and do this and do that.
Whack on a figure four.
Yeah, absolutely. Go home. And then from there, just do that sort of stuff. I had all the time in the world, and I really don't have it anymore. And it sort of suffered to a point.
Yep.
And so, and basically my friends are now running the company. Right. They're running the company. I actually dabbled with a mate of mine. We actually we tried our own promotion. Yeah. 2006, 2007. Just in between it. Not an ideal thing when you're trying to make an Olympics either. Especially when you got your mate, you're over in New Zealand or something like that, and they're doing a gig, and they're like, "Mal, where's this?" And you're like, "Dude, I'm busy." Right? So, and it's that thing. It's two different worlds. They didn't understand where I was. Yeah. I understand exactly where they were, and I was like, "Oh God, really sorry, but mate, I can't help at the moment." And,
exactly.
And we did really, really. I think it was called Total Wrestling Entertainment.
Yep.
And I think from that perspective, it was just three guys that loved the business and loved it and thought that we could change it a little bit.
Yep.
And I think we changed the production value, I think, a little bit and things like that within the means of what we could.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of it, and it's one of those shooting star type deals where it went... And it went, and we, and the best part is we actually walked away neutral, which is awesome. So we didn't lose money, we didn't gain any money. Everything we spent, by the time we sold our ring and did everything, we pretty much looked at each other. And that old episode of Jerry Seinfeld where he puts his hands in his pocket, lost $20, finds another one. It was us. So it was really happy.
And you didn't lose the friends out of it either.
Yeah. No.
Still talking to them.
The one thing that I must say, and it was Steve. Steve's a lot younger. I've known him for a long, long time. Yeah. And I was actually the best man at his wedding. And this guy is not even. He's not even 30 yet.
Damn.
And I'm 43. I've known him for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Known him when he was a kid and doing all this sort of stuff. He and I ran a business, and most business partners, when that sort of stuff happens, you actually separate.
Yeah.
It actually brought us closer. I actually made our friendship really, 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 really close.
Right.
So, it's a very bizarre thing, and it's absolutely positive. But, so doing all that, and then they just had some downtime with their ring.
Yep.
And they decided to put on a seminar week.
Yep. Okay.
And they rang me up and just said, "How's your availability?" And I said, funnily enough, I said, "Can you fit me Monday?" He goes, "Yep." And they said, "When's the ring coming out?" And they go, "Oh, next Tuesday." And I went, "I'll do the next Monday as well.
Yep.
We'll do it over a 2-part." And basically what they wanted to do was expose the wrestlers to the reality of what they do.
Yeah.
So, for example, just understanding how to, like, you know, if you're going to put on a choke, this is what a choke is.
This is what it really
This is how it works. You're going to put an arm bar. This is how you do it.
Yeah.
This is how you get out of it. This is how you do this.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you ever watch basic wrestling, where if you've ever been to a local wrestling thing, if a guy puts on an arm bar, the first way to get out of it, if you can't get out of it, is to bum shuffle all the way to the ropes and grab a rope.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody does it. So change it up. So show, you know, so we were showing how to get out, or how to, you know, maybe stack them and do all that, you know, all that sort of stuff.
Especially now with MMA being so popular. And it's not like there's people that go, MMA and wrestling, there's a lot of crossover in fans, and people are smart enough to go, well, hang on, that's not how you do it.
Absolutely.
So,
But when you look at Brock Lesnar's motif he has with UFC now, it's all based on mixed martial arts.
Absolutely.
And his
Like, he's
Kimura
got the
finisher.
gloves, got the Kimura finisher.
Yeah. Although I'm yet to see people escape from a Kimura when it's put up to their ear.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then again, there's no one kidding themselves thinking that Brock Lesnar isn't a dangerous motherfucker.
Yeah.
No,
No matter if it's fake or not, this dude will mess people up.
Absolutely.
If he's got a new Kimura, I'd be whispering in his ear, Brock, you know this is fake, right? You know we're going to have a dinner afterwards. All right. Just as long as you're aware, mate.
Did you eat my strawberries?
So then WrestleMania, Ronda in the middle of the ring. It must have been.
Oh, it was awesome. I was actually at I was up visiting I was up visiting Kochi with my family and her family up in New South, and she's a massive wrestling mark. And she was. I said, "Have you seen it?" And so, like, I've got WWE app, so I'm like, "Yep, here we go. There it is." And she sat there like this. And from us, it was that thing where we've been around her. You just got to see it. She's like, look, she goes, she's in the front row. I'm like, I know, how good's that?
Yeah.
You know, and you just watch it where Ronda to mine is the true testament that you never know where you're going to be.
Yep.
You never know what's going to happen.
Yep.
You play a sport called judo.
Yeah.
You play a sport called judo in the US.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? She has become the largest female athlete in the world, for want of a better word. There used to be an athlete called Tani, and she was the lightweight Japanese fighter.
Yep.
She won. She basically was undefeated for God knows how long. The only two losses that she had was 92 and 96 Olympic finals. Right? Comes into Sydney, unbackable favourite, and gonna, you know, should win. This lady has her own, like, animation program in Japan. Right. They actually they chartered a 747 to bring fans in to watch her fight first day. Right. So so Ryoku Tani, just like from a judo perspective, Ronda Rousey is bigger than Ryoku Tani.
Yeah, right.
And that's a point where I'm getting her first name right. But, yeah, bigger than Tani, and it's that point where you think about that concept. You never know. You just never know. Ronda got into MMA because she thought she could do better than making money as a barmaid.
Exactly.
Who was an Olympic bronze medalist.
And had nothing to fall back on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 'Cause I remember hearing her story where she'd done the bronze medal with the Olympics and then came back and
Living in a car.
Nothing to do now. There's no other thing that can facilitate those skills that she's spent her entire life actually perfecting.
Absolutely.
And she's like, what do I do? I've got a job
and she was successful at it. So there you go, kids. Tennis or golf.
Yeah.
Because you get payment straight up.
Exactly. I think a big part about her appeal too is that her work ethic is what's made her who she is, and the fact she's been working at it so long. Because you wouldn't say she's not the strongest athlete out there. She's not. If you were going to build a female MMA athlete, she's not everything you'd go for, but she devoted everything she had to it. First to judo, then to MMA, and she's even setting things up to do acting and whatever. She just devotes herself completely, and so I think it just shows to young girls and young guys that if you're willing to put in the time on the mats or in the books, if that's what you want to be, you can do it. And you know, she is just so single-minded, and she's the elite female athlete in the world at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, and if you're a young girl out there and your mum's a psycho,
wakes you up with an armbar every morning.
All I'm saying is give her a chance.
There's
just
still hope
do a
for you
thing
yet.
or two. You never know.
Mal, I think that's about all we've got to go through, mate. That was unbelievable. And I didn't know, I knew you'd worked with the wrestling. I didn't know you had a long history of that.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like there's a future there as well.
The thing is, we're only stopping this because we're out of time.
No worries.
So we'll probably do a follow-up because we're actually...
I'd love to.
Believe it or not, we're at 2 hours and 44 minutes. At the moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Zenith Sports, we'll put the links up everywhere.
Yep.
And... again, thank you,
Sensei. Guys, I just want to say thank you so very much. Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure, mate. And we'll do it again for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No worries. I can't believe that's almost 3 hours.